The gala hall of Aegis Dynamics gleamed with glass walls and polished chrome, filled with investors sipping champagne and engineers boasting about firewalls and encryption. At the center stood Evelyn Royce, the CEO, dazzling in a designer suit and armed with a smirk sharp enough to cut steel. "Speak in code and I'll pay you," she said, tossing the words like a challenge to amuse her guests. The laughter was instant, echoing off marble floors. Her target? Marcus Hale, the janitor leaning quietly on his mop by the far wall, invisible until her cruelty made him a prop. Polite chuckles rolled into open ridicule. "What would he know about codes?" someone sneered. "He probably thinks a cipher is a brand of detergent." The crowd drank in the humiliation, expecting Marcus to mumble, stammer, and shrink. Instead, Marcus straightened. His eyes, calm but piercing, met Evelyn's. And then, he replied. Not in plain English, but in clipped, flawless tradecraft, radio brevity, coded phrasing, the language of covert operatives. The laughter died on the spot. They wanted entertainment. What they got was a ghost of the CIA standing in a janitor's boots. And before the night was over, they would learn just how costly their mockery would be. The gala at Aegis Dynamics was meant to impress. Investors, senators, and military brass gathered beneath crystal chandeliers, sipping champagne while the latest in biometric scanners and digital firewalls were paraded before them. Every corner of the hall gleamed with wealth and ambition. But in a room obsessed with power and image, Marcus Hale was little more than background noise. He moved quietly with his mop and bucket, invisible by design. His faded coveralls bore bleach stains, his boots were cracked with age, and his hands were calloused from years of hard work. Marcus kept his head down, sweeping between clusters of suits who didn't notice him, until Evelyn Royce decided to. Evelyn thrived on spectacle. Aegis Dynamics was her empire, and tonight she was its empress, her words sharp and her laughter commanding. Surrounded by her inner circle, cybersecurity prodigies in tailored suits and ex-military contractors with rigid posture, she sought amusement wherever she pleased. And Marcus, the janitor in the shadows, became her chosen target. She raised her glass, her smile dripping with condescension. "You there," she called out, her voice cutting through the hum of conversation. Heads turned, curious. "Tell me, do you know what we do here?" The room chuckled. Marcus straightened, unsure if silence or honesty would save him. "I keep the place clean, ma'am," he answered softly. Evelyn laughed, a sound that invited everyone else to join. "Charming. But here, we deal in secrets, codes, encryptions, intelligence. Things far above your mop bucket." The crowd roared with amusement. A young engineer smirked. "Maybe he thinks a cipher is a floor cleaner." Another chimed in, "Or that binary is a kind of janitorial supply." The insults rolled, each one louder, more brazen, until Evelyn raised her hand for silence. "No, no," she said. "Let's make this interesting. Marcus, was it? Speak in code, and I'll pay you." Her grin widened. "Impress me, and maybe I'll double your salary. Fail, and, well, you'll prove just how out of place you are in this hall." The challenge landed like a stone dropped in water. Ripples of laughter spread through the crowd. Some whispered bets. Others leaned in, eager for the humiliation. Marcus stood frozen, his mop still in hand. For a moment, he looked every bit the part they imagined, hesitant, nervous, cornered. Evelyn gestured toward him, eyes glittering with mockery. "Come on, janitor. Speak in code. Say something only a spy would know. Let's see if you're more than a shadow on the floor." The crowd roared again, convinced they had cornered him. To them, it was a game. To Marcus, it was something else entirely. Because beneath his quiet exterior, memory stirred. Long nights in dimly lit rooms, radio chatter whispered in clipped phrases, missions where a single wrong word meant disaster. Years of training, buried beneath a life of anonymity, clawed their way to the surface. He looked up slowly, his gaze steady, no longer meek. For the first time that night, he locked eyes with Evelyn. And though the crowd expected stammering or excuses, what came next was different. Marcus inhaled, and his reply was sharp, precise, and chillingly authentic. The room fell quiet. Confusion flickered across Evelyn's face. Some in the audience chuckled uncertainly, unsure if this was a joke. But one man, a retired intelligence officer seated near the back, sat forward suddenly, recognition flashing in his eyes. Marcus had spoken like a field operative. Not slang, not guesswork, tradecraft. Real, dangerous tradecraft. The laughter faltered. Whispers replaced it. Wait, what did he just say? That sounded official. No way, he's just a janitor. Evelyn's smirk wavered, but she pressed on. Clever, she said, forcing another laugh. Anyone can mimic words. But do you even know what they mean? Marcus didn't flinch. He set down his mop, straightened his back, and spoke again, this time faster, weaving phrases and responses that formed a cadence of coded language, the kind only operatives use to exchange critical intel under surveillance. Each line layered proof on proof, undeniable to anyone who knew. The retired officer rose slowly from his chair, his eyes never leaving Marcus. He whispered to the person beside him, that man isn't bluffing. Evelyn's challenge, meant to humiliate, had just turned into something else, the spark of revelation. But instead of backing down, she raised the stakes. Fine, she snapped, her smile tightening. If you're so fluent in code, prove it. We have the best security team money can buy. She motioned to two contractors at her side, men built like walls. Beat them at their own game. Decode what they send you, live, right here. Do that, and maybe we'll believe you. The crowd gasped. The challenge was absurd, nearly impossible. Everyone expected Marcus to falter, to finally hit a wall that revealed him as a fraud. But Marcus only tilted his head, calm as still water. As you wish, he said quietly. And just like that, the humiliation Evelyn had planned became something far more dangerous, the beginning of a showdown she would regret. Did you feel that turn? 1 second Marcus was just a janitor with a mop, the next he was speaking like a ghost out of the CIA playbook. That's the kind of twist that makes you sit up and realize, never underestimate the quiet ones. And if you want more stories where the underdog flips the script on the powerful, hit that subscribe button right now. Join this community of people who believe brilliance hides in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to shock the world. The silence after Marcus's coded reply hung in the air like a thunderclap. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The laughter, the smirks, the mockery, gone. Evelyn Royce tilted her head, her sharp confidence wavering just enough for the room to notice. Cute trick, she finally said, her voice carrying. But speaking like a radio operator doesn't mean you understand the real game. Do you even know what's happening here tonight? Marcus's lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile. He had stood in rooms like this before, different city, different faces, but the same arrogance. He remembered briefings underground, where silence was survival, and every coded phrase could mean life or death. I know enough, he said softly, but his tone carried a steel edge. The engineers and cybersecurity hotshots shifted uncomfortably, caught between loyalty to Evelyn and a gnawing curiosity about the man they had mocked. They wanted to dismiss him, but something in his poise told them it wouldn't be easy. Evelyn clapped her hands sharply. Fine. Since you want to play along, let's make it interesting. She gestured toward a massive digital board at the far end of the hall. On it streamed a complex cipher, glowing lines of shifting letters and symbols pulsing like a living organism. This is a zero-day encryption puzzle, one no outsider has cracked. If you can even get close to solving it, I'll give you a check on the spot. But if you fail, you'll leave this building and never step foot in it again. Deal? The crowd buzzed, hungry for spectacle. They wanted the janitor crushed. Marcus only nodded. Deal. A tablet was handed to him, glowing with the cipher. His rough hands dwarfed the sleek device, but the way he gripped it, steady, precise, looked nothing like the fumbling of a novice. His eyes scanned the screen once, twice, then his fingers began to move. It was like watching a pianist on the keys of a grand piano. Where others saw chaos, letters, symbols, and endless sequences, Marcus saw patterns. He saw the rhythm of substitution, the faint footprints of transposition. His mind ticked with the quiet intensity of someone who had once decrypted foreign intercepts at 3 a.m. while lives hum in the balance. "Is he actually working it out?" one investor whispered. "No way. That cipher was designed to withstand brute force and analysis," another said. "This is just for show." But the murmurs grew as lines began to shift on Marcus's screen. He wasn't guessing. He was breaking it apart piece by piece. Minutes stretched. The crowd's initial amusement turned to unease. Evelyn's sharp gaze never left him, but her jaw had tightened. She wanted him to fail, but each passing second made it clear he wasn't failing. Then Marcus did something no one expected. He spoke aloud, not to them, but in that clipped CIA-style cadence. Echo 7, Shift 19, mirrored. Alpha 3, disregard false header. Pattern confirms recursive substitution. The words, meaningless to the crowd, were music to one man's ears. At the edge of the hall, a retired intelligence officer, invited as a security consultant, froze. His drink trembled in his hand. "My God," he whispered. "That's tradecraft. That's real." The consultant stepped closer, watching intently. Every phrase Marcus uttered aligned perfectly with genuine field decryption methodology. He wasn't improvising. He was executing. On the digital board, the symbols began to collapse into coherent English. Gasps rippled through the room as the gibberish gave way to a simple phrase. "Knowledge belongs to those who see what others ignore." The hall erupted in shock. Evelyn's composure cracked for the first time. She had brought in teams of elite analysts who had failed to solve this, and yet the janitor, a man she mocked, had dismantled it before their eyes. "That's impossible," she hissed, but her voice faltered. The intelligence consultant stepped forward, addressing the room. "This man isn't guessing. He's trained. Only someone with deep operational experience could approach a cipher like that. You've just witnessed a professional at work." Whispers spread through the investors and guests. The humiliation they had expected for Marcus had inverted completely. Evelyn looked smaller, cornered by the very stage she created. Marcus handed the tablet back. His expression was calm, almost weary, as if the entire performance had cost him more in memories than in effort. "You asked me to speak in code," he said quietly. "Now you know I can." Evelyn tried to recover. "Luck. That's all this is, some parlor trick you picked up." "My team could," but she trailed off as her own cybersecurity lead shook his head, pale. "No, ma'am," the engineer said reluctantly. "That was the real thing. He solved what we couldn't." The crowd gasped again. Investors whispered, eyes darting between Evelyn and Marcus. The power dynamic in the room had shifted, and everyone knew it. Marcus straightened, his mop leaning idly against the wall where he had left it. "You wanted a show," he said, voice steady. "But code isn't theater. It's survival. And sometimes survival speaks louder than wealth or power." The intelligence consultant approached him directly now, extending a hand. "I know who you are, or at least, what you've done. That was agency-level work. Anyone here with clearance will confirm it." Marcus shook his hand briefly, then looked back at Evelyn. "You wanted me humiliated. Instead, your people saw the truth. Next time, choose your target more carefully." The room burst into murmurs, the echo of applause beginning from the back. It wasn't just shock anymore, it was respect. Genuine, awed respect, aimed at the man they had once overlooked. The hall was still trembling with whispers when the first clear sound broke through, applause. A single pair of hands clapping at the back, hesitant at first, then joined by another, and another, until the entire hall filled with the rolling thunder of appreciation. Investors, engineers, even the servers moving with trays of champagne, every hand came together for Marcus. The janitor who had been mocked stood calm, his posture humble yet unshakable. He didn't bow, didn't grandstand. He simply gave a nod, as though to say thank you, but it was never about this. Evelyn Royce, however, looked stricken. Her polished confidence had cracked into panic. She turned toward her board members, desperate for some sign of support, but saw only cold calculation in their eyes. She had promised spectacle, but instead she had been undone on her own stage. The consultant's voice carried over the applause. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just witnessed brilliance disguised as humility. I suggest we remember this moment, not for what it reveals about him, but for what it reveals about us. The word stung. Evelyn tried to interject, but one of her lead investors cut her off with a raised hand. We trusted you to lead, Evelyn. Yet you invited humiliation onto yourself and this company. This, he gestured toward Marcus, is what competence looks like. Not arrogance. A murmur of agreement rolled through the investors. Deals had been lost tonight, not by Marcus's hand, but by Evelyn's pride. In the unspoken court of reputation, she had been sentenced. For her engineers, the fallout came swiftly. A few, who had laughed the loudest, found themselves shunned by their colleagues, their credibility tarnished. Rumors would follow them in every conference and boardroom. You mocked a man who knew more than you ever will. Their arrogance had turned to ashes. And Evelyn? Within weeks, whispers would become headlines. Investors withdrawing. Contracts canceled. A resignation framed as mutual agreement, but everyone would know she had been forced out. Her empire of polished glass had cracked, and Marcus had been the hammer, without ever raising his voice. Through it all, Marcus refused to linger in the limelight. As the applause still echoed, he retrieved his mop from the corner, gripping it with the same steadiness he had shown with the tablet. To him, the mop was no less worthy than any tool. He had done what he came to do, not for glory, but because integrity demanded it. He left the gala without fanfare, stepping into the cool night air. The city stretched before him, neon and shadow. People inside still buzzed with his name, but Marcus knew it would fade. Fame was a burden he never wanted. Back in the quiet corridors where he worked, Marcus hummed softly while pushing his mop along tiled floors. To anyone passing, he was just the janitor again. And that suited him perfectly. Because Marcus Hale didn't measure his worth in applause or contracts, he measured it in the knowledge that when arrogance tried to mock humility, humility answered in code. And the world would never forget it. And there it is, the janitor who spoke like a spy, the man dismissed as invisible until he revealed the brilliance hiding in plain sight. His story is a reminder, never underestimate the quiet ones, because they might carry more knowledge, skill, and power than anyone expects. Now it's your turn. What did this moment teach you? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear how you interpret Marcus's victory. Did you see yourself in him, or someone you know who hides their brilliance? Let's build a community here where every underdog's voice matters. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that greatness doesn't always wear a suit. Sometimes, it carries a mop and still rewrites the script.